not the reality has not changed that much. Refugees still continue to come. They've been coming for decades now, just different times where there's heavier waves of refugees coming in than others. And so people are still coming now with COVID. That has restricted the flow, and it has really, as we've seen the last couple of years, it has only um, made it worse as far as the longevity of how long someone's going to have to stay in a transitional state like they do in Greece. Greece is not the intended destination for the majority of refugees. There's not much there for them. I mean, Greeks themselves are struggling with unemployment. So the ideal is to move on and to be placed somewhere else. But the system is backlogged, and refugees are forced in the first country that they land in the EU. They have to stay there to be processed. And in Greece, there's refugees that have been there now for 3, 4, 5 years.
Is there another wave coming with the takeover of the Taliban, or are they restricting whether or not people can leave?
They're restricting now. I mean, all of those that got out initially, not all of them got on a plane to get out. A lot of them are crossing land borders, and so there are, who knows how many that are making their way. The reality is the majority of them, if they're going to try that, are going to make their way to Turkey and try to get across the Aegean Sea. So that a lot of that just depends on their ability to get there right now with the COVID restrictions. I don't know what those are. I can't speak to that, in some of those countries that they're trying to travel through, but I wouldn't be surprised. I know, you're always told that there's, hundreds of thousands, if not a million refugees in Turkey just waiting for the opportunity to cross. So, that could come at any time based on geopolitics and global disasters and whatever. So I think we just settled on, we can work with what God has given us in this moment. Let's be faithful with that and be as prepared or more prepared than we were initially. When that first wave came through 2015, 2016, we were not prepared. Nobody was prepared strategically for something like that. So we've learned a lot from that lesson, and feel like we're in a place, throughout, not only in Athens but throughout Europe and some back into the Middle East as well, with trained up, ready to go nationals that are insiders that are ready and already planting churches and making disciples. So if that wave comes, I can say for sure that we're more ready than we were before. We learned very early as cross-cultural workers where our level of effectiveness just stops, and we just got to recognize that and be okay with it. Me as a foreigner coming in, working with any other people group, I am never the best option. Never. Right here in Kentucky, I'm the best option. These are my people. I know the language, but anytime I'm crossing into another culture, even here, if I'm trying to share with a Spanish speaking, Mexican that has moved here for work, it's going to be far more effective if there's a native Spanish speaker that, is a solid believer in our area that's doing the sharing of the gospel and the making of the disciples. And I just want to come alongside him to help him do that more effectively. So regardless of where we are, but for sure, when we cross the pond and we go somewhere internationally, cross-culturally, as a Westerner, we just got to come to terms with where our limits stop. And I've always used, basically, I look at a D league to an A league. Mm-hmm. I can use football analogies or baseball, but maybe not everybody's going to understand that. So, a D league is if I need a translator. That's simple enough. Anybody that needs a translator to share the gospel or make a disciple, you're D league. Just accept it. That's who you are. It is what it is. It doesn't mean God can't use you. It just means you're not the most effective. Let's be faithful and do that until we get to another, so C league would be that next level. And that's if I learn a language so well that I don't need a translator. So great. Praise the Lord. I can certainly be more effective. However, I'm a Westerner. I'll process information like a Westerner. I'll never be Eastern thought processing individual. I don't know what it's like to convert out of Islam or Hinduism.
Mm.
I don't know the societal pressures that would happen because of that. So I'm still not the best option. I'm better, but I'm still not the best option. B League would be what we would call near culture, and that's that's an Afghan sharing with an Iranian, right? Language is about 80% similar, culture is about 80% similar, religion is 100% similar, but Afghans and Iranians, they don't always mix well. Iranians have kind of looked down on Afghans throughout history, and Afghans have felt, suppressed by Iranians. So it's not best, but it certainly is better than me, even as a C leaguer who has that language down really good. And then A League is an insider. And A League is an Afghan sharing with an Afghan. By far, is the most, all of us would agree with that, is by far the most effective worker for sharing the gospel, making disciples, planting churches, and raising up leaders. And so then I feel like our responsibility as cross-cultural workers is to find A-leaguers. And I'm looking within that population of believers. Typically, by the time I meet them, they're already a believer. Sometimes I think if you look at movements globally, the majority of the time, it's an insider that was already a believer, that probably was bilingual, that someone was able to have a conversation with them, hear their vision, cast some vision, come alongside and train and equip and release. I think you would see that in many movements, modern day movements. And so, okay, I need to try to find those types of individuals. And so at that point now, I'm just looking for the faithful, available, teachable, reproducing, A-league individuals. And that's who then I would come alongside to try to train and equip and encourage and empower and release. It's something to pray for, to ask God for. God, would you provide us these individuals? Because we know that's best. We know that that's highly effective. And we knew early on in our time in Athens that we needed to find these type of individuals. And so we'll use Danny as an example. Danny is a Kurd who left war-torn country and made his way to Turkey as a refugee. He's a young single Muslim who, because of war, because of infighting, had already given up on Islam and would consider himself an atheist. While he's in Turkey, as we hear often in the testimony of Muslims that come to faith, he began to have dreams. And it was a recurring dream that he would have night after night. And it was him walking up to a crossroads out in the middle of nowhere, just the crossroads. And there's a man sitting at the crossroads, and Danny would walk up to the man and he would ask him, which way do I go? And the man wouldn't say anything. And this happened 3, 4, 5 nights in a row. And Danny would tell you, man, when he would be angry. He's like, I keep asking this guy, which way I need to go. He never would answer. So eventually though, the next dream, he doesn't say anything, but he holds out his hand to shake his hand, and there's a tattoo on his arm of a cross. And so he's a cross. And so eventually, another dream, and it just keeps progressing. And now when he asks the man, which way do I go? He says, I am the way. So Danny begins to do some research and really ask questions about Christ and Christianity. He's in Turkey, so it's not the easiest thing to do to find a church, but he does find eventually through Facebook a group of believers that are meeting, reaches out to the pastor, who, of course, is skeptical and really takes a long time even to get a face-to-face. Once they do get a face-to-face, Danny shares his story, and eventually he's invited to come, and he comes to faith there in Turkey. So already a believer. While in Turkey, he starts doing, ministry as best he can. He doesn't know much, obviously, but he's got a passion to now share this with other people. He finally gets to the coast where he pays the smuggler, makes his way across to Greece, and he's in Greece for about 6 months before we ever meet him, and has already led 4 families to the Lord, entire families to the Lord in the refugee camp that he's in Greece, and is meeting them. Well, he hears about our work, and he contacts us and says, hey, I want to do ministry with you guys. And we don't know him. We're like, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? And he says, listen, this is what I'm doing. And so, I mean, this is like every missionary's dream.
Yeah.
You've got a Muslim background believer that's come to faith, that's already sharing his faith. He's led people to the Lord. He says, "This is what I'm doing. Can you help me do it better?" Okay, So it's finding individuals like Danny, who was a young believer but passionate, very passionate. And so now we just start to look for those characteristics, those qualities of faithfulness, availability. Is he teachable, and does he reproduce whatever he's given? And so then that's where your tool set comes in. Is your tool set reproducible? And we'll filter guys like this by obedience to the commands of Christ, and his faithfulness to go and to share. And as he's leading other people, you begin to look for things like releasing the authority for baptism, some of the things that we know, but to find a national that's doing it is just huge. And so then, we come alongside a brother like Danny and just train, equip, encourage, support him so that he can do this work without any fear or frustration. He's a refugee, living in Greece. So, we come alongside brothers like this in a very strategic way so that God can use him most effectively. And so any fruit that it's Danny's fruit. It's not mine. It's not like I'm asking him to bring those people to me. I've only met some of his key leaders. I've never met anybody else downstream. And only that is during, when we're doing mid-levels and really trying to coach and to train and equip. So it's all about empowering him to be used. Now, the uniqueness of Athens is that we were able to find not one or two or three, but 5 or 6 brothers just like Danny that came out of different faith systems, come from different countries and cultures, similar stories, all came to faith, and either on their refugee journey or while in Athens, when we meet them, they're already doing something. They're just not doing it the most effective way. And so we just developed a team there. And our team meetings, you've got, an Afghan, an Iranian, an Iraqi, a Pakistani, a Greek, and, a couple of Americans in there. It's just a great, beautiful picture of heaven. But we're getting to, work for God's kingdom together. And so we just developed a synergy there in Athens of all these brothers co-laboring together, all pursuing the same mission, all pursuing the same vision, all using the same tools. And so it just created this synergy where we were able to really, really work hard. And so really the investment of the last 3 or 4 years, just seeing God at work, not only there, but now as their people have been relocated to Germany or Norway or Finland or Spain or Italy or Bosnia or wherever they are, on their journey, some even in Danny's work have prayed and said, we need to go back to our home country. And so they paid smugglers to get there. Now they pay money to fly to go back to take the gospel with them. And so just now looking at how the refugee highway has expanded God's kingdom, because we've got this concentrated time in Athens where we can really train and raise up so that when anyone leaves, they know how to make a disciple, start a church, raise up others.
So maybe we just debrief some of the principles I picked up, just hearing you explain that. One is the paradigm that you're not the solution. The Westerner is not the solution to the Great Commission or the only solution.
Right.
So you're looking for cultural, linguistic insiders and seeing them, they're the A-leaguers. At best, I'm a C-leaguer.
Right.
So you've got to have that paradigm. But the other piece is you're in the field. So Danny hears you're doing something. If you're just sitting in your office praying for Danny, he'd say, well, okay, but I want to make disciples, not just pray. So, and you've got some tools that you and others have refined. And so Danny sees, not only are they doing what I want to do, but they're doing it well. I've got something to learn from these guys. And then the other thing you're doing is investing relational time in those who are, faithful and fruitful and available and teachable. You personally are connecting with them and building a relationship, but you're also building a relationship for them with peers, and they may be different nationalities, but you're all in this together, which means there's quite a filter in terms of who gets into that network. I mean, the gospel's going out to everyone, but you're looking for leaders of leaders and creating that community together with them as they reach each of their people groups. Did I leave anything out?
I'll expand on that because that's a great point. You know, as foreigners, as Westerners, you know, we tend to be gullible. We tend to believe the best in a person because that's just who we've been taught to be. But as we all know, you know, that's not the reality. And what these brothers started doing, even when it was just 2 or 3 of us, they would help do the filtering much better and much quicker than I could. You know, we learned that lesson in India as well when we served there. And we thought, oh, this brother, he really wants to do the work. And our Indian national brother we were working with, he's like, you know, and he would let us make it. You know, we said, oh no, brother, we really this is going to be great. 2 months later, we're like, yeah, you were right. You know, he knew it. He knew it from the beginning. And so now we've just learned to listen. And so I've seen the level of discernment in these brothers because they know their people. You know, they know. And when you could be doing this in a third world country. That's one thing. When you're doing this work with refugees, just so many things get heightened as far as what I've really got to be. I have to make sure that these brothers are wanting to do this for the right reason. So your filter has to be really high. But these guys, they started to protect what we were doing in a good way. You know, sometimes protection can be holding on to too much. Yeah. It's not that. But they saw what we were doing. They were excited about it, and they wanted to protect that work from others that said they wanted to do it, but probably had, you know, false motives or false intention, or they just weren't ready. And they were just able to do that so much quicker, so that when we ended up building that team out, it was of highly effective brothers, but it was in large part because we listened to them. They helped us know who we needed to bring into that often.
And you're like a coach you're still playing the game.
Yeah.
But that coach is looking at the next generation of stars, in a sense.
Look at me. My playing days are done. Right? Yeah, you're right. It's helping them be the most effective that they can be for the kingdom. And man, just finding pure joy in that. Oftentimes I've seen missionaries that they spend years, you know, perfecting a language and learning a culture, trying to be that, you know, C League or most of us understand we're never going to be, you know, an Afghan. But, you know, surely I can get to the point where I'm near culture, you know, and I'm going to be highly effective. I mean, you can live in a country for 20 years. You're always going to be American. You're always going to be Australian or Brit, whatever. You're never going to be the best option. And so, you know, I'm not trying to cut corners. I'm just saying, what's the most effective? And the most effective, and let's think about it too. I mean, where in the world are there no believers? I mean, there's some places, you know, but let's be honest. Most places where we have Western missionaries, there's already believers. And where there are believers, there's somebody there that's a potential L3, L4. There's somebody there that's already out sharing the gospel. And it's just about finding them. But I mean, you made another good point. We've got to be doing it, you know. So yes, I'm D League or C League. I'm in another culture, but I've still got to be doing the work, just out of obedience, you know, to the commands of Christ. I just recognize I'm not the most effective. I'm, you know, blubbering my way through it. But praise God, if he sends me another believer that says, this is what happened in India. Hey, I saw you guys sharing in the park, and I'm here to tell you were doing it wrong. Praise the Lord. You know, help me, brother. And he, you know, that guy's now looking for somebody to do this with. He probably didn't think it was going to be 2 white Americans, but what it ended up being.
And what's God's role in this? Where do you see the hand of God connecting you to these folk like Danny?
Yeah, I mean, for one, God has already done the work, and and again, that's not going to be in every situation. In our case, it has been, and in many that you would talk to, I think you're going to find that to be the case. They're already a believer. God's already saved them. I think it's the when God brings two brothers together or sisters together to run and to do the work. I mean, that's just, and again, cross culturally, that's just an act of God. It's like somebody hears of somebody else, or oftentimes I'm casting vision with a pastor or a ministry leader, and about halfway through they're like, "Oh, I know who you need to meet," and so they've already been working in some. I never would have met them otherwise.
Yeah.
But God puts it on the heart of that person that I'm casting vision to say, "Oh, you need to connect these guys," or you're out sharing the gospel at the same time in the same park, and you try to share with them while they're trying to share with you. Those types of things happen, and it's a God thing. And then the rest is just us being faithful and obedient to the Lord and what He's commanded us to do, and humbling ourselves. Again, I think the greater test is on us as Westerners to die to self, and to know that we're not the best option, to know that God has someone there. We just have to find them. And I'm just saying it would be worth our time I'm not saying don't learn language and culture. Don't learn it and do it for so long, assuming you're going to be the best option. Give equal amount of time to finding the believers that are in that area, cast vision, go out, do it yourself, and see who comes alongside, or who's always just kind of watching from the back of the room while you're doing it. That could be a potential national partner in the making. And then there's some best practices. I mean, very rarely are they going to be an existing pastor. It's just the way that it is. Very rarely, and I'm not saying it can't happen. But very rarely are they seminary educated or in the Bible college. It's usually the least of these. It's usually those that nobody else wants to touch. That certainly has been our case every time that we've worked with a brother. It's never somebody. They're never somebody else's first choice. They're rough around the edges for a reason, but it's what we need. And you look at the disciples. What were they called by the crowds? Unschooled, ordinary men. Many of them fishermen. You look at that and say, man, we need to be looking for those stinky, smelly fishermen among our people that are a little bit out there that nobody else wants to work with. That might just be a brother that is going to start a movement among their people.